Unit 1.
Group 1. Apprentice. Young Ben Franklin learned the printing trade by serving as an apprentice to his half-brother James. Aptitude. Eric is clumsy with tools. He has little mechanical aptitude. Craftsman. To build a house, you need the services of carpenters, bricklayers, plumbers, electricians, and several other craftsmen. Dexterity. You can't expect an apprentice to have the same dexterity as a master craftsman. Adroit. Our adroit passing enabled us to score 4 touchdowns. Ambidextrous. Jack is an ambidextrous hitter. He can bat right-handed or left-handed. Versatile. Leonardo da Vinci was remarkably versatile. He was a painter, sculptor, architect, musician, engineer, and scientist.
Group 2. Indigence. By hard work, many Americans have raised themselves from indigence to wealth. Economize. Housewives can economize by buying their milk in gallon containers. Impoverish. The increase in dues is only 10 cents. It will not impoverish any member. Destitute. The severe earthquake killed hundreds of people and left thousands destitute. Frugal. The old man had nothing to eat but bread and cheese. Yet he offered to share this frugal meal with his visitor.
An allowance of $200 a week for lunches and fares isn't much, but you can get by on it if you are frugal.
Group 3. Avarice. People who suffer from avarice spend much less and save much more than they should. Dowry. With his wife's dowry, the young attorney was able to open a law office. Means. To own an expensive home, a yacht, and a limousine, you have to be a man of means. Opulence. Dickens contrasts the opulence of France's nobility with the indigence of her peasants. Covet. Peter coveted his neighbor's farm, but could not get her to sell it. Fleece. If your brother paid $400 for that car, he was fleeced. The mechanic says it is worth $150. Hoard. Tom has a reputation as a miser who hoarded every penny he could get his hands on. Affluent. The new wing to the hospital was made possible by a gift of $500,000 from an affluent contributor. Financial. People who keep spending more than they earn usually get into financial difficulties. lavish. The young heir was warned that he would soon have nothing left if he continued to be lavish with money. Lucrative. To run a restaurant is a lucrative business.
Group 4. Craven. A hero risks his life to help others. A craven runs from the scene. Trepidation. I thought Carol would be nervous when she made her speech, but she delivered it without trepidation. Cower. Brave men defy tyrants, instead of cowering before them. Intimidate. The younger boys would not have given up the playing field so quickly if the older boys hadn't intimidated them. Apprehensive. Several apprehensive parents telephoned the school when the children were late in getting home from the museum trip. Dastardly. It was dastardly of the captain to desert the sinking vessel and leave the passengers to fend for themselves. Timid. If the other team challenges us, we should accept. Let's not be so timid.
Group 5. Exploit. Robert E. Peary won worldwide fame for his exploits as an Arctic explorer. Fortitude. The captain showed remarkable fortitude in continuing to lead his men despite a painful wound. Audacious. Risking serious injury, the outfielder made an audacious leap against the concrete wall and caught the powerfully hit ball. After we had waited for about 20 minutes, an audacious freshman came along and tried to get in at the head of our line. Dauntless. The frightened sailors wanted to turn back, but their dauntless leader urged them to sail on. Indomitable. Columbus had an indomitable belief that he would reach land by sailing west. Plucky. Though defeated, our team put up a plucky defense against their taller and huskier opponents. Rash. When a person loses his temper, he may say or do something rash and regret it afterwards.
Group 6. Alias. Inspector Javert discovered that John Smith was not the mayor's real name, but an alias for Jean Valjean, the ex-convict. Jean Valjean, alias John Smith, was arrested by Inspector Javert. Enigma. I have read the first homework problem several times, but can't understand it. Maybe you can help me with this enigma. Lurk. General Braddock's troops, marching in columns, were easy targets for the Indians lurking behind trees. Seclude. To find a quiet place to study, Bruce had to seclude himself in the attic. Clandestine. Before the Revolutionary War, an underground organization known as the Sons of Liberty used to hold clandestine meetings in Boston. Latent. A good education will help you discover and develop your latent talents. Stealthy. The burglar must have been very stealthy if he was able to get past the two watchmen without being noticed.
Group 7. Avowal. The white flag of surrender is an avowal of defeat. Apprise. The magazine has apprised its readers of an increase in rates beginning January 1st. Divulge. I told my secret only to Margaret because I knew she would not divulge it. Elicit. By questioning the witness, the attorney elicited the fact that it was raining at the time of the accident. Enlighten. The new student was going in the wrong direction until someone enlightened him that his room is at the other end of the hall. Manifest. My art teacher told my parents that I had failed to manifest any interest in her subject. Overt. The teacher didn't believe that Ned was annoying me until she saw him in the overt act of pulling my hair.
Group 8. Accord. Though we are in accord on what our goals should be, we differ on the means for achieving them. Compact. The states bordering on the Delaware River have entered into a compact for the sharing of its water. Compromise. At first, the union and management were far apart on wages, but they finally came to a compromise. Accede. When I asked my English teacher if I might change my topic, he readily acceded to my request. Conform. When a new style in clothes appears, women usually hasten to conform. Correspond. The rank of second lieutenant in the Army corresponds to that of ensign in the Navy. Dovetail. Gilbert's skill as a writer dovetailed Sullivan's talent as a composer, resulting in the famous Gilbert and Sullivan operettas. Reconcile. After our quarrel, my brother and I refused to talk to each other until Mother reconciled us. Relent. The mayor has banned all lawn sprinkling because of the water shortage. However, if the reservoirs fill up, he may relent somewhat. Compatible. Miss Evans knows that Arthur and I can't be on the same committee. We're not compatible. Consistent. By bringing up an unrelated matter, you're not being consistent with your previous statement that we should stick to the topic.
Group 9. Altercation. The teacher halted the altercation by separating the two opponents before they could come to blows. Cleavage. Our party hopes to repair the cleavage in its ranks so that it may present a united front in the coming elections. Discord. Billy Budd put an end to the discord above the rights of man. He was an excellent peacemaker. Discrepancy. 80 students came to the dance, but only 74 tickets were collected at the door. Can you account for this discrepancy? Friction. At the budget hearing, there was considerable friction between the supporters and the opponents of higher taxes. Litigation. Some business disputes can be settled out of court. Others require litigation. Antagonize. The official antagonized the leader of his own party by accusing him of cowardice. Dissent. The vote approving the amendment was far from unanimous. 6 members dissented. Embroil. Motorists who disregard traffic regulations eventually become embroiled with the law. Estrange. A quarrel over an inheritance estranged the brothers for many years. Wrangle. When I left, 2 neighbors were quarreling noisily. When I returned an hour later, they were still wrangling. Irreconcilable. It is doubtful whether anyone can make peace between the estranged partners. They have become irreconcilable. At variance. Cynthia is an independent thinker. Her opinions are often at variance with those of the rest of the class.
Group 10. Condiment. There is a shelf in our kitchen for pepper, salt, mustard, catsup, and other condiments. Glutton. I had a second helping and would have taken a third, except that I didn't want to be considered a glutton. Devour. The hikers were so hungry that they devoured the hamburgers as fast as they were served. Slake. On a sultry afternoon, you may find a long line of people at the drinking fountain, waiting to slake their thirst. Edible. Never eat wild mushrooms, even though they look edible. They may be poisonous. luscious. The watermelon was very luscious. Everyone wanted another slice. Palatable. The main dish had little flavor, but I made it palatable by adding condiments. Succulent. The steak will be dry if you leave it in the oven longer. Take it out now if you want it to be succulent. Voracious. John would not be overweight if he were not such a voracious eater.
Group 11. Gamut. After the test, I thought at first I had done very well, then quite well, and finally poorly. I ran the gamut from confidence to despair. Iota. If you make the same mistake again, despite all my warnings, I will not have one iota of sympathy for you. Magnitude. Shopping for clothes can be a small matter for some, but a problem of the greatest magnitude for others. Pittance. At those low wages, few will apply for the job. Who wants to work for a pittance? Superabundance. Our committee doesn't need any more help. We have a superabundance of helpers. Inflate. Since the football has lost air, we shall need a pump to inflate it. Colossal. The game will be played in a colossal sports arena with a seating capacity of more than 60,000. Commodious. Even during change of classes, there is no crowding because the halls and stairways are commodious. Infinite. In our science lesson tomorrow, we shall consider whether space is bounded or infinite. Infinitesimal. If there is any salt in this soup, it must be infinitesimal. I can't taste it. Inordinate. Frank kept my book for such an inordinate length of time that I shall never lend him anything again. Picayune. The trouble with your studying is that you spend too much time on picayune details and not enough on the really important matters. Puny. The skyscraper dwarfs the surrounding buildings. By comparison to it, they seem puny.
Group 12. Infirmity. On leaving the hospital, the patient felt almost too weak to walk, but he soon overcame this infirmity. Debilitate. The patient had been so debilitated by the fever that he lacked the strength to sit up. Enervate. Enervated by the heat, we rested under a shady tree until our strength was restored. Incapacitate. Ruth will be absent today. She is incapacitated by a sore throat. Decadent. When industry moves away, a flourishing town may quickly become decadent. Decrepit. Bill rode past the street on a horse that looked decrepit and about to collapse. Dilapidated. Up the road was an abandoned farmhouse, partially in ruins, and near it a barn even more dilapidated. Flimsy. Judy understands algebra well, but I have only a flimsy grasp of the subject. Frail. To be an astronaut, you must be in robust health. It is not an occupation for a frail person.
Group 13. Bulwark. For centuries, the British regarded their navy as their principal bulwark against invasion. Citadel. The fortified city of Singapore was once considered unconquerable. In 1942, however, this citadel fell to the Japanese. Fort. I am better than Jack in English, but not in math. That is his fort. Vigor. The robust young pitcher performed with his usual vigor for 7 innings, but he weakened in the 8th and was removed from the game. Invigorate. If you feel enervated by the heat, try a swim in the cool ocean. It will invigorate you. Cogent. Excuses for not handing work in on time vary. Some are flimsy, as for example, I left it at home. Others are more cogent, such as a physician's note. Dynamic. If you elect Jessica, you may be sure she will present our views forcefully and energetically. She is a very dynamic speaker. Formidable. Our hopes for an easy victory sank when our opponents took the field. They were much taller and huskier, and they looked formidable. Impregnable. Before World War II, the French regarded their Maginot Line as an impregnable bulwark against a German invasion. Robust. The lifeguard was in excellent physical condition. I had never seen anyone more robust. Tenacious. After the dog got the ball, I tried to dislodge it from her tenacious jaws, but I couldn't. Vehement. Your protest was too mild. If it had been more vehement, the dealer might have paid attention to it.
Group 14. Default. The Royals must be on the playing field by 4 p.m. If they do not appear, they will lose the game by default. The finance company took away Mr. Lee's car when he defaulted on the payments. Ignore. The motorist was given a ticket for ignoring a stop sign. Neglect. Some of the students in the play neglected their studies during rehearsals, but after the performance, they caught up quickly. For leaving his post, the guard was charged with neglect of duty. Heedless. Before his injury, Mike used to jump from the stairs, heedless of the no jumping sign. Now he pays attention to it. Inadvertent. Unfortunately, I made an inadvertent remark about Irma's failure while she was present. Remiss. The owner of the stolen car was himself remiss. He left the keys in the vehicle. Slovenly. You would not expect anyone so neat in her personal appearance to be slovenly in her housekeeping.
Group 15. Solicitude. My brother's solicitude over getting into college ended when he received word that he had been accepted. Vigilance. The night watchman who apprehended the thief was praised for his vigilance. Heed. Our teacher said that we might have a test, but I didn't heed her. That's why I was unprepared. Scrutinize. The guard at the gate scrutinized Harvey's pass before letting him in, but he just glanced at mine. Discreet. You were discreet not to say anything about our plans when Harry was here. He can't keep a secret. Meticulous. Before signing a contract, one should read it carefully, including the fine print. This is one case where it pays to be meticulous. Scrupulous. Mr. Brooks refused to be a judge because his wife's niece is a contestant. He is very scrupulous. Wary. General Braddock might not have been defeated if he had been wary of an ambush.
Group 16. Denizen. On their safari, the hunters stalked lions, tigers, and other ferocious denizens of the jungle. Domicile. The announcement read, "The Coopers have moved and invite you to visit them at their new domicile, 22 Apple Street." Inmate. When the warden took charge, the prison had fewer than 100 inmates. Native. The entire Rousseau family are natives of New Jersey, except the grandparents, who were born in Italy. Tobacco, potatoes, and tomatoes are Native American plants that were introduced into Europe by explorers returning from the New World. Nomad. Nomads have no fixed homes, but move from region to region to secure their food supply. Sojourn. On her trip home, Jane will stop in St. Louis for a 2-day sojourn with relatives. Commute. Hundreds of thousands of suburban residents regularly commute to the city. Migrate. Because they were persecuted in England, the Puritans migrated to Holland. In winter, many European birds migrate to the British Isles in search of a more temperate climate. Nomadic. Most of the Indians of the North American plains are nomadic. Abroad. After living abroad for a time, Robert became homesick for his native land.
Group 17. Defiance. The union showed defiance of the court order against a strike by calling the workers off their jobs. Infraction. Parking at the bus stop is illegal. Motorists committing this infraction are heavily fined. Insurgent. When the revolt broke out, the government ordered its troops to arrest the insurgents. Insurrection. The insurrection was easily suppressed, less than a dozen being slain on both sides. Malcontent. The work stoppage was caused by a few malcontents who felt they had been ignored when the promotions were made. Sedition. The author of the pamphlet advocating the overthrow of the government was arrested for sedition. Transgress. Jack's previous record showed he had been an obedient student and had never transgressed school regulations. Trespass. The owner erected a "Keep Off" sign to discourage strangers from trespassing on his land. Insubordinate. Do as mother says. If you are insubordinate, father will probably hear of it. Perverse. Though I had carefully explained the shorter route to him, the perverse youngster came by the longer way.
Group 18. Allegiance. Every school day, millions of children pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands. Acquiesce. Though I wasn't enthusiastic about Tom's plan to go fishing, I acquiesced in it because there seemed nothing else to do. Defer. Husbands, as a rule, do not decide on the colors of home furnishings, but defer to their wives in these matters. Discipline. Mr. Walker, who had been told that he was getting a disciplined class, was surprised to find it unruly. Submit. Though he boasted he would never be taken alive, the outlaw submitted without a struggle when the police arrived. Docile. Dan is easy to teach, but his brother is not so docile. Meek. Only 2 of the girls protested when they were ordered off the field. The rest were too meek to complain. Pliable. We tried to get Joe to change his mind, but he was not pliable. Perhaps you can influence him. Tractable. For his cabinet, the dictator wanted tractable men. Therefore, he appointed no one whom he could not control. Group 20. Essence. The union and management held a lengthy meeting without getting to the essence of the men's dissatisfaction. Low wages. Prerequisite. A mark of at least 75% in basic art is a prerequisite for advanced art. Entail. Can your family afford the extra expense that a larger apartment entails? Necessitate. Mr. Brown told Ellen that her refusal to work necessitates his sending for her parents. Oblige. If your friend were in trouble, wouldn't you feel obliged to go to his help? Obviate. Helen has agreed to lend me the book I need. This obviates my trip to the library. Compulsory. State law makes attendance at school compulsory for children of certain ages. Gratuitous. Were it not for your gratuitous interference, the children would have quickly settled their dispute. Imperative. If you have failed a subject you need for graduation, it is imperative that you go to summer school. Incumbent. Dan felt it incumbent on him to pay for the window, since he had hit the ball that broke it. Indispensable. He can do without luxuries and entertainment. However, food, shelter, and clothing are indispensable. Pressing. Before preparing for tomorrow's party, I have some more pressing matters to attend to, such as finishing my report. Superfluous. Since we already have enough food for the picnic, please don't bring any because it will only be superfluous. Unit 2.
Group 1. Autobiography. In her autobiography, The Story of My Life, Helen Keller tells how unruly she was as a young child. Autocrat. The autocrat was replaced by a ruler responsible to the people. Autograph. The baseball star wrote his autograph for an admirer who came up to him with a pencil and scorecard. Automation. Many workers have lost their jobs as a result of automation. Automaton. An autocrat prefers his subjects to be automatons rather than intelligent human beings. Autonomy. After World War II, many colonies were granted autonomy and became independent nations. Autopsy. The cause of the actor's sudden death will not be known until the autopsy has been performed. Authentic. When you withdraw money, the bank compares your signature with the one in its files to see if it is authentic. Automatic. You do not have to defrost this refrigerator because it is equipped with an automatic defroster. autonomous. The Alumni Association is not under the control of the school. It is a completely autonomous group.
Group 2. Aristocracy. Before 1789, France was an aristocracy. When the Revolution of 1789 began, many members of the French aristocracy fled to other lands. Autocracy. Germany under Adolf Hitler was an autocracy. Bureaucracy. The mayor was criticized for setting up an inefficient bureaucracy unresponsive to the needs of the people. Democracy. France helped the 13 colonies establish the first New World democracy. Plutocracy. If only millionaires can afford to run for office, we shall quickly become a plutocracy. Technocracy. Many are opposed to a technocracy because they do not wish to be ruled by technical experts. Aristocrat. An aristocrat would like to see noblemen in control of the government. Winston Churchill was born an aristocrat. He was the son of Sir Randolph Churchill. Democrat. The senator used to be a Republican, but is now a Democrat.
Group 3. Demagogue. No responsible leader, only a demagogue, would tell the people that, if elected, he will solve all their problems. Epidemic. The high rate of absence in the lower grades last spring was caused by the measles epidemic. Federal aid was granted to the depressed area where unemployment had risen to epidemic proportions. Democratize. The adoption of the 19th Amendment, giving women the franchise, greatly democratized the United States. Democratic. A nation cannot be considered democratic unless its leaders are chosen by the people in free elections.
Group 4. Panacea. A 2-week vacation is wonderful for fatigue, but will not cure baldness or improve vision. It is no panacea. Pandemonium. The huge crowds in Times Square grew noisier as the old year ticked away, and when midnight struck, there was pandemonium. Panoply. The opposing knights, mounted and in full panoply, awaited the signal for the tournament to begin. Panorama. The top of the Empire State Building affords an excellent panorama of New York City and the surrounding area. Pantomime. Not until The Great Dictator did Charlie Chaplin play a speaking part. All his previous roles were in pantomime. Pan-American. The Pan-American Highway links all the countries of the Western Hemisphere from Alaska to Chile.
Group 5. Anachronism. It is an anachronism to say that William Shakespeare typed his manuscripts. Chronicle. One of the earliest accounts of King Arthur occurs in a 12th century chronicle of the kings of Britain. Chronology. Bruce named all the presidents, but he made an error in chronology when he placed Ulysses S. Grant after Abraham Lincoln instead of after Andrew Johnson. Chronological. The magazines in this file are not in chronological order. I found the February issue after the October one. Synchronize. The clocks in the library need to be synchronized. One is a minute and a half behind the other.
Group 6. Kleptomania. The millionaire who was caught shoplifting was found to be suffering from kleptomania. Mania. For a student with an A average to quit school 2 months before graduation is sheer mania. Though I am still fond of stamp collecting, I no longer have the mania for it that I originally had. Maniac. The deranged behavior of John's brother leaves little doubt that he is a maniac. Pyromania. The person arrested for setting the fire had been suspected of pyromania on 2 previous occasions. Maniacal. The customer protested in such a loud, violent, and maniacal manner that onlookers thought he had lost his sanity.
Encyclopedia. There are 4 different encyclopedias in the reference section of our school library. Orthopedic. Patients recovering from broken limbs are housed in the hospital's orthopedic ward. Pedagogue. A new teacher usually receives a great deal of help from the more experienced pedagogues. Pedagogy. Mr. Brown's lessons are usually excellent. He is a master of pedagogy. Pediatrician. When the baby developed a fever, mother telephoned the pediatrician. Pediatrics. From the number of baby carriages outside his office, you can tell that Dr. Enders specializes in pediatrics.
Group 8. Orthodontist. A student who wears braces on his teeth is obviously under the care of an orthodontist. Orthography. American and English orthography are very much alike. Orthopedist. A deformity of the spine is a condition that requires the attention of an orthopedist. Orthodox. There was no religious liberty in the Massachusetts Bay Colony. Roger Williams, for example, was banished because he did not accept Orthodox Puritan beliefs. Unorthodox. Vaccination was rejected as unorthodox when Dr. Jenner first suggested it.
Group 9. Genealogy. Diana can trace her descent from an ancestor who fought in the Civil War. I know much less about my own genealogy. Genesis. According to legend, the Trojan War had its genesis in a dispute between 3 Greek goddesses. Homogenize. If dairies did not homogenize milk, the cream would be concentrated at the top, instead of being evenly distributed. Heterogeneous. Many different racial and cultural groups are to be found in the heterogeneous population of a large city. Homogeneous. The dancers for the ballet were selected for similarity of height and build so that they might present a homogeneous appearance.
Group 10. Barometer. When the barometer indicates a rapid drop in air pressure, it means a storm is coming. Chronometer. Unlike ordinary clocks and watches, chronometers are little affected by temperature changes or vibration. Diameter. Some giant redwood trees measure 325 feet in height and up to 30 feet in diameter. Meter. When water meters are installed, it will be easy to tell how much water each home is using. A meter is 3.37 inches longer than a yard. Odometer. All eyes, except the driver's, were fastened on the odometer as it moved from 9,999.9 to 10,000 miles. Photometer. The intensity of a source of light, such as an electric light bulb, can be measured with a photometer. Speedometer. I advised Dad to slow down as we were in a 30-mile-an-hour zone, and his speedometer registered more than 40. Symmetry. As the plane sped by, we were impressed by the perfect symmetry of their V formation.
Group 11. Antagonist. Japan was our antagonist in World War II. Brutus is the main character in William Shakespeare's Julius Caesar, and Antony is his antagonist. Antibiotic. The antibiotic penicillin stops the growth of bacteria causing pneumonia, tonsillitis, and certain other diseases. Antibody. When the body is invaded by foreign agents, such as bacteria or viruses, the antibodies go to work against them. Antidote. By telephone, the physician prescribed the exact antidote to be given immediately to the poison victim. Antipathy. A few of the neighbors have an antipathy to dogs, but most are fond of them. Antiseptic. The wound was carefully washed, then an antiseptic, tincture of iodine, was applied. Antitoxin. We are injected with diphtheria antitoxin produced in horses because the antitoxin manufactured by our bodies may not be enough to prevent diphtheria. Antonym. Temporary is the antonym of permanent.
Group 12. Acronym. The word radar is an acronym for Radio Detecting and Range. Homonym. Fair and fair are homonyms. Onomatopoeia. Notice the onomatopoeia in these lines by the poet John Dryth. The double, double, double beat of the thundering drum. Pseudonym. O. Henry is the pseudonym of William Sidney Porter. Synonym. Building is a synonym for edifice. Anonymous. When you write a letter to the editor, be sure to sign it. Responsible publications will not print anonymous letters.
Group 13. Dermatologist. The patient with the skin disorder is under the care of a dermatologist. Dermis. The tiny cells from which hairs grow are located in the dermis. Epidermis. Although very thin, the epidermis serves to protect the underlying dermis. Taxidermist. The lifelike models of animals that you see in museums are the work of taxidermists. Hypodermic. A hypodermic syringe is used for injecting medication beneath the skin.
Group 14. Agronomy. The science of agronomy helps farmers obtain larger and better crops. Gastronome. Being a gastronome, my uncle is well acquainted with the best restaurants in the city. Nemesis. The fleeing murderer escaped the bullets of 2 pursuing policemen, but ran into a third who proved to be his nemesis. We would have ended the season without defeat, if not for our old nemesis Greeley High. Astronomical. The first astronomical observations with a telescope were made by the Italian scientist Galileo. It is difficult to conceive of so astronomical a sum as $100 billion. Economic. The President's chief economic advisor expects that production will continue at the same rate for the rest of the year. Economical. Which is the most economical fuel for home heating? Gas, electricity, or oil?
Group 15. Cellophane. When used as a wrapper, cellophane lets the purchaser see the contents of the package. Fancy. We must be able to distinguish between fact and fancy. Fantasy. Anne is not sure whether she saw a face at the window. Perhaps it was only a fantasy. Phantom. The phantom of the slain Caesar appeared to Brutus in a dream. Phenomenon. Philip is a phenomenon in math. He always gets 100% on tests. Fever and inflammation are phenomena of disease. Phenomenal. Young Mozart, a phenomenal child, began composing music at the age of 5. Fantastic. Robert Fulton's proposal to build a steamboat was at first regarded as fantastic.
Group 16. Diathermy. Diathermy may be prescribed for arthritis, bursitis, and other conditions requiring heat treatment. Thermometer. During the hot spell, the thermometer reached 100 degrees on 6 days in a row. Thermostat. We set the thermostat to shut off the heat when the room temperature reaches 72 degrees. Thermal. At Lava Hot Springs in Idaho, visitors may bathe in the thermal mineral waters. Thermonuclear. It is believed that the sun gets its energy from thermonuclear reactions constantly taking place within it.
Group 17. Protagonist. Brutus is the protagonist in William Shakespeare's Julius Caesar, and Antony is the antagonist. Protocol. The protocol initiated by the representatives of the 3 nations is expected to lead to a formal treaty. It is a breach of protocol for a subordinate publicly to question the judgment of his superior officer. Protoplasm. Protoplasm distinguishes living from non-living things. Prototype. The crude craft in which the Wright brothers made the first successful flight in 1903 was the prototype of the modern airplane. Protozoan. The tiny protozoans are believed to be the first animals to have appeared on Earth.
Group 18. Antithesis. I cannot vote for a candidate who stands for the antithesis of what I believe. Epithet. In crafty Ulysses and Richard the Lionhearted, the epithets are crafty and the lion-hearted. Hypothesis. When Columbus first presented his hypothesis that the earth is round, very few believed it. Synthesis. Only political parties can produce the synthesis or compromise of interest necessary to make representative government work. Thesis. Do you agree with Elbert's thesis that a student court would be good for our school? Candidates for advanced college degrees usually write a thesis based on original research. Synthetic. Cotton is a natural fiber, but rayon and nylon are synthetic.
Group 19. Aster. Most asters bloom in the fall. Asterisk. The asterisk, after reduced to $1.95, refers to a footnote reading, "Today only." Asteroid. Compared to planet Earth, some asteroids are tiny, measuring less than a mile in diameter. If an asteroid loses an arm to an attacker, it can grow back the missing arm. Astrologer. An astrologer would have people believe that their lives are regulated by the movements of the stars, planets, sun, and moon. Astronaut. Yuri Gagarin, the world's first astronaut, orbited the Earth in an artificial satellite on April 12, 1961. Astronomer. Because the stars are so far away, astronomers measure their distance from Earth in light years. Disaster. The attack on Pearl Harbor was the worst disaster in the history of the U.S. Navy.
Group 20. Anagram. Mote is an anagram for atom. Cartographer. Ancient cartographers did not know of the existence of the Western Hemisphere. Cryptogram. Military leaders, diplomats, and businessmen use cryptograms to relay secret information. Electrocardiogram. After reading Mrs. Hale's electrocardiogram, the physician assured her that her heart was working properly. Epigram. The more things a man is ashamed of, the more respectable he is one of George Bernard Shaw's epigrams. Graphite. Lead pencils do not contain lead, but rather a mixture of clay and graphite. Monogram. Some of Dad's handkerchiefs are embroidered with his monogram. Monograph. For his thesis, the student plans to write a monograph on the life of an obscure 19th century composer. Stenographer. A court stenographer has to be able to take down more than 250 words a minute. Graphic. The reporter's graphic description made us feel that we were present at the scene. Typographical. Proofs submitted by the printer should be carefully checked to eliminate typographical errors. Group 1. Abrasion. The automobile was a total wreck, but the driver luckily escaped with minor cuts and abrasions. Avocation. My uncle, an accountant, composes music as an avocation. Abdicate. The aging king abdicated his throne and went into retirement. Abduct. The Greeks attacked Troy to recover Helen, who had been abducted by the Trojan prince Paris. Abhor. Janet is doing her best to pass English because she abhors the thought of having to repeat it in summer school. Abscond. A wide search is underway for the manager who absconded with $10,000 of his employer's funds. Absolve. The fact that you were absent when the assignment was given does not absolve you from doing the homework. Of the 3 suspects, 2 were found guilty and the 3rd was absolved. Abstain. My dentist said I would have fewer cavities if I abstained from eating candy. Avert. The mayor promised to do everything in his power to avert a strike by newspaper employees. Abnormal. We had 3 absences today, which is abnormal. Usually everyone is present. Abrupt. Today's art lesson came to an abrupt end when the gong sounded for a fire drill. Absorbing. That was an absorbing book. It held my interest from beginning to end. Averse. I am in favor of the dance, but I am averse to holding it on May 25th. Group 2. Adherent. You can count on Martha's support in your campaign for re-election. She is one of your most loyal adherents. Advent. The Weather Bureau gave adequate warning of the advent of the hurricane. Adversary. Before the contest began, the champion shook hands with his adversary. Adapt. People who work at night have to adapt themselves to sleeping in the daytime. Gone with the Wind was adapted for the movies. Adjoin. Mexico adjoins the United States. Adjourn. The judge adjourned the court to the following Monday. Addicted. You will not become addicted to smoking if you refuse cigarettes when they are offered. Adequate. The student who arrived 10 minutes late did not have adequate time to finish the test. Adjacent. The island of Cuba is adjacent to Florida. Adverse. Because of adverse reviews, the producer announced that the play will close with tonight's performance. Group 3. Group 4. Antecedents. David's antecedents came to this country more than 100 years ago. Anteroom. If the physician is busy when patients arrive, the nurse asks them to wait in the anteroom. Post-mortem. The purpose of a post-mortem is to discover the cause of death. Postscript. After signing the letter, I noticed I had omitted an important fact. Therefore, I mentioned it in a postscript. Antedate. If you used yesterday's date on a check written today, you have antedated the check. Alaska antedates Hawaii as a state, having gained statehood on January 3, 1959, 7 months before Hawaii. Post-date. This is a post-dated check. It has tomorrow's date on it. Ante-meridium. Our classes usually begin at 8 a.m. Post-meridium. At 4 p.m., the chairman announced the debate to be closed. Postgraduate. After college, Mary hopes to do postgraduate work in law school. Group 5. Group 6. Bicentennial. The bicentennial of George Washington's birth was celebrated in 1932. Semicircle. At the end of the lesson, a group gathered about the teacher in a semicircle to ask additional questions. Bisect. A diameter is a line that bisects a circle. Bicameral. The American legislature is bicameral. It consists of the House of Representatives and the Senate. Biennial. A defeated candidate for the House of Representatives must wait 2 years before running again, because the elections are biennial. Bimonthly. We receive only 6 bills a year because we are billed on a bimonthly basis. Semi-annual. Promotion in our school is semi-annual. It occurs in January and June. Semi-monthly. Employees paid on a semi-monthly basis receive 2 salary checks per month. Bilateral. French forces joined the Americans in a bilateral action against the British at the Battle of Yorktown in 1781. Bilingual. Montreal has a large number of bilingual citizens who speak English and French. Some schools and Spanish-speaking communities send bilingual notices written in English and Spanish to the parents. Bipartisan. Congressional committees are bipartisan. They consist of both Democratic and Republican members. Semiconscious. In the morning, as you begin to awaken, you are in a semiconscious state. Semi-detached. All the houses on the block are attached except the corner ones, which are semi-detached. Semi-skilled. Workers who enter a semi-skilled occupation do not have to undergo a long period of training. Group 7. Group 8. Insurgent. The king promised to pardon any insurgent who would lay down his arms. General Washington led the insurgent forces in the Revolutionary War. Erosion. Running water is one of the principal causes of soil erosion. Emigrate. In 1889, Charles Steinmetz, an engineer, emigrated from Germany. Immigrate. In 1889, Charles Steinmetz immigrated to the United States. Evoke. The suggestion to lengthen the school year has evoked considerable opposition. Invoke. Refusing to answer the question, the witness invoked the Fifth Amendment, which protects a person from being compelled to testify against himself. Excise. With a penknife, he peeled the apple and excised the wormy part. Incise. The letters on the monument had been incised with a chisel. Exhibit. The art department is exhibiting the outstanding posters produced in its classes. Inhibit. Ellen told the child not to cry, but he could not inhibit his tears. Expel. Expelled from the university because of poor grades, the student applied for readmission the following term. Impel. Greg's low mark in the midterm impelled him to study harder for the final. Enervate. Irma was so enervated by the broiling sun that she nearly fainted. Implicate. The accused is not the only guilty party. 2 others are implicated. Impugn. The treasurer should not have been offended when asked for a financial report. No one was impugning his honesty. Incarcerate. On July 14, 1789, the people of Paris freed the prisoners incarcerated in the Bastille. Inscribe. The name of the winner will be inscribed on the medal. Eminent. Steinmetz's discoveries in the field of electricity made him one of the eminent scientists of the 20th century. Imminent. At the first flash of lightning, the beach crowd scurried for shelter from the imminent storm. Exclusive. An exclusive club does not readily accept newcomers. Before the game, each team had exclusive use of the field for a 10-minute practice period. Inclusive. The film will be shown from August 22nd to the 24th, inclusive, for a total of 3 days. Group 9. Group 10. Extracurricular. Why don't you join an extracurricular activity such as a club, the school newspaper, or a team? Extraneous. You said you would stick to the topic, but you keep introducing extraneous issues. Extravagant. Reliable salesmen do not make extravagant claims for their product. In a few months, the extravagant heir spent the fortune of a lifetime. Intramural. The intramural program, in which one class competes with another, gives you a greater chance to participate than the interscholastic program between teams of competing schools. Intra-party. The Democrats are trying to heal intra-party strife so as to present a united front in the coming election. Intrastate. Commerce between the states is regulated by the Interstate Commerce Commission, but intrastate commerce is supervised by the states themselves. Intravenous. Patients are nourished by intravenous feeding when too ill to take food by mouth. Group 11. Con. Are you on the pro or con side of this argument? Before taking an important step, carefully study the pros and cons of the matter. Contraband. Customs officials examined the luggage of the suspected smuggler, but found no contraband. Controversy. American controversy with Great Britain over the Oregon Territory nearly led to war. Contravene. By invading the neutral nation, the dictator contravened his earlier pledge to guarantee its independence. Countermand. The monitor ordered the student to go to the end of the line, but the teacher countermanded the order. Counter. The student's plan to drop out of school ran counter to his parents' wishes. Incontrovertible. The suspect's fingerprints on the safe were considered incontrovertible evidence that he had participated in the robbery. Group 12. Interlude. Between World War II and the Korean War, there was a 5-year interlude of peace. Intermediary. For his role as intermediary in helping to end the Russo-Japanese War, Theodore Roosevelt won the Nobel Peace Prize. Intermission. During the intermission between the first and second acts, you will have a chance to purchase refreshments. Intercede. My brother would have lost the argument if Dad hadn't interceded for him. Intercept. We gained possession of the ball when Russ intercepted a forward pass. Intersect. Broadway intersects 7th Avenue at Times Square. Intervene. The summer vacation intervenes the close of one school year and the beginning of the next. Let the boys settle the dispute by themselves. Don't intervene. Interlinear. It is difficult to make interlinear notes if the space between the lines is very small. Interurban. The only way to get to the next town is by automobile or taxi. There is no interurban bus. Group 14. Group 15. Benediction. Before beginning his difficult journey, the young man visited his parents to receive their benediction. Malediction. With her dying breath, Queen Dido pronounced a malediction on Aeneas and all his descendants. Benefactor. The museum could not have been built without the gift of $1 million by a wealthy benefactor. Malefactor. Shortly after the crime, the malefactor was apprehended and turned over to the police. Beneficiary. The sick and the needy will be the beneficiaries of your gift to the community fund. Malice. I suspect Ronnie tripped me so that I wouldn't be able to play tomorrow. He did it not as a joke, but out of malice. Malnutrition. The lack of milk and fresh vegetables in the child's diet was responsible for his malnutrition. Maltreat. 2 news photographers were attacked by the mob and their cameras were smashed. It is disgraceful that they were so maltreated. Beneficial. Rest is usually beneficial to a person suffering from a bad cold. Benevolent. A benevolent employer has a sincere interest in the welfare of his employees. Malevolent. I have heard some malevolent misrepresentation of her. Maladjusted. Carlo was maladjusted in the early grades, not because of poor intelligence, but because he couldn't speak English. Group 16. Demolish. A wrecking crew is demolishing the old building. Demote. For being absent without leave, the corporal was demoted to private. Depreciate. Automobiles depreciate rapidly. A $2,500 car is worth less than $2,000 within a year of purchase. The building superintendent feels depreciated if you refer to him as the janitor. Despise. Students who tell lies are despised by their classmates. Deviate. Mr. Parker always notifies the parents when a student neglects his homework, and he will not deviate from this rule in your case. Devour. The children must have been starved when they came in for dinner because they devoured their food. Decadent. The decadent downtown section was once a flourishing business district. Deciduous. Maple, elm, birch, and other deciduous trees lose their leaves in the fall. Demented. Whoever did this must have been demented. No sane person would have acted in such a way. Dependent. Children are dependent on their parents until they are able to earn their own living. Group 17. Discrepancy. Jack should have had $8 in his wallet, but he had only $6. He could not account for the discrepancy. Disrepair. The bicycle I lent Tom had been in good condition, but he returned it in disrepair. Discredit. The parents discredited the child's story, since he was in the habit of telling falsehoods. Disintegrate. The explosion disintegrated an entire wing of the factory. Dissent. When the matter was put to a vote, 29 agreed and 4 dissented. Distract. Passengers should do nothing to distract the driver's attention from the road. Discontent. Dan was discontent with his Spanish mark. He had expected at least 10 points more. Dispassionate. For a dispassionate account of how the fight started, ask a neutral observer, not a participant. Dissident. The compromise was welcomed by all the strikers except a small dissident group who felt that the raises were too small. Group 18. Secession. South Carolina's secession was imitated by 10 other states and led to the formation of the Confederacy. Sedition. The signers of the Declaration of Independence, if captured by the enemy, would probably have been tried for sedition. Secede. When Abraham Lincoln was elected president in 1860, South Carolina seceded from the Union. Seclude. Anne was so upset by her failure in math that she secluded herself and refused to see anyone. Segregate. In most high schools, boys and girls attend the same classes, except in health education where they are segregated. Secure. Are you worried about passing the midterm exam, or do you feel secure? Land in a growing city is a secure investment. Group 19. Circumference. The circumference of a circle equals pi times the diameter. Circumlocution. The circumlocution, the game ended with a score that was not in our favor, should be replaced by we lost the game. Circumnavigate. Ferdinand Magellan's expedition was the first to circumnavigate the globe. Circumscribe. The principal has requested all teachers to circumscribe failures in red on the report cards. The patient was placed on a very circumscribed diet. He was forbidden to have coffee, spices, or raw fruits or vegetables. Circumvent. To circumvent local sales taxes, shoppers often buy in neighboring communities that do not have such taxes. Circumspect. Don't jump to a conclusion before considering all the facts. Be circumspect. Group 20. Collusion. It was not known whether the price increases resulted from higher costs or from collusion among the producers. Concord. Neighbors cannot live in concord if their children keep fighting with one another. Coalesce. During the Revolutionary War, the 13 colonies coalesced into one nation. Collaborate. Tom is collaborating on the work with his friend. Convene. The House and the Senate will convene at noon to hear an address by the President. Correspond. Jack's account of how the fight started did not correspond with the other boy's version. Coherent. In coherent writing, every sentence is connected in thought to the previous sentence. Congenital. Helen Keller's deafness and blindness were not congenital defects, but were acquired after birth. Group 4. Overdose. Do not take more of the medicine than the doctor ordered. An overdose may be dangerous. Oversupply. We have a shortage of skilled technicians, but an oversupply of unskilled workers. Overburden. It would overburden me to have my piano lesson Thursday because I have so much homework on that day. Overestimate. Joe overestimated the capacity of the bus when he thought it could hold 60. It has room for only 48. Overshadow. Their gaieties were overshadowed by the sad news. Overwhelm. Group 22. Perforate. The physician said the tack had gone through Betty's shoe and sock without perforating her skin. Permeate. At breakfast, the aroma of freshly brewed coffee permeates the kitchen and dining room. Perplex. I need help with the fourth problem. It perplexes me. Persist. The teacher told Eric to stop whispering. When he persisted, she sent him to the dean. The rain was supposed to end in the morning, but it persisted through the afternoon and evening. Perturb. Maggie's parents were perturbed when they learned that she had failed 2 subjects. Perennial. Authors have come and gone, but Shakespeare has remained a perennial favorite. Perennials like the azalea and forsythia bloom year after year. Pertinent. Stick to the point. Don't give information that is not pertinent.
1. Forearm. Henry protected his face from George's blows by raising his forearms. Forebear. John F. Kennedy's forebears migrated to America from Ireland. Foreboding. The day before the accident, I had a foreboding that something would go wrong. Forecast. Have you listened to the weather forecast for tomorrow? Forefront. In combat, the officer was always in the forefront of the attack, leading his men on to victory. Foresight. Foresight is better than hindsight. Forward. Before Chapter 1, there is a brief foreword in which the author explains why he wrote the book. Foreshadow. Our defeat in the championship game was foreshadowed by injuries to 2 of our star players in a previous game. Foregoing. Carefully review the foregoing chapter.
Group 24. Proponent. At the budget hearing, both the proponents and the opponents of the tax increase will be able to present their views. Prospect. To a freshman, graduation is a distant but pleasant prospect. Procrastinate. Start working on the assignment without delay. It doesn't pay to procrastinate. Project. The apparatus projects missiles into space. Propel. Jet-propelled planes travel at very high speeds. Protract. Our cousin stayed with us only for the weekend, but promised to return in July for a protracted visit. Protrude. Keep your feet under your desk. Do not let them protrude into the aisle. Provoke. Jeff's account of his experiences on a farm provoked much laughter. There would have been no fight if you hadn't provoked your brother by calling him names. Proficient. When I fell behind in French, the teacher asked one of the more proficient students to help me. Profuse. Despite a large income, the actor has saved very little because he is a profuse spender. Prominent. The mayor, the governor, and several other prominent citizens attended the preview. Group 16. Soliloquy. What an actor says in a soliloquy is heard by no one except the audience. Solitude. Though I like company, there are times when I prefer solitude. Solo. Instead of singing a solo, Brenda would prefer to join with me in a duet. Desolate. After the war, the villagers hoped to return to their desolated homes. At 5:30 a.m., the normally crowded intersection looks desolate. Soul. Franklin D. Roosevelt was the sole candidate to be elected president for a fourth term. Solitary. A hermit leads a solitary existence.
Group 1. Amateur. The performance was staged by a group of amateurs who have been studying dramatics as a hobby. When it comes to baking a cake, Mother's the expert. I'm only an amateur. Amity. We must look ahead to the time when the dispute is over and amity is restored. Amiable. Cindy is an amiable child. Everybody likes her. Amicable. Let us try to settle our differences in an amicable manner. Amorous. In the famous balcony scene, the amorous Romeo expresses undying love for Juliet. Enamored. John Rolfe, an English settler, became enamored of the Indian princess Pocahontas and married her.
Group 2. Animosity. Someday the animosity that led to the war will be replaced by amity. Animus. Though David defeated me in the election, I bear no animus toward him. We are good friends. Equanimity. If you become extremely upset when you lose a game, it is a sign that you lack equanimity. Unanimity. In almost every discussion, there is bound to be some disagreement. Don't expect unanimity. Magnanimous. The first time I was late, Miss O'Neill excused me with the warning that she would not be so magnanimous the next time. Unanimous. Except for one student who voted no, the class was unanimous in wanting the party.
Group 3. Affinity. Because they share the same language and ideals, Americans and Englishmen have an affinity for one another. Finale. Every skit in our class show was loudly applauded, from the opening scene to the finale. Finis. The story is far from complete because the finis is not yet written. Confine. I will confine my remarks to the causes of the War of 1812. The next speaker will discuss its results. Definitive. Remember that your answer will be treated as definitive. You will not be permitted to change it.
Group 4. Fluid. Air, water, molasses, and milk are all fluids. During November, the military situation remained fluid, with advances and retreats by both sides. Flux. When prices are in a state of flux, many buyers delay purchases until conditions are more settled. Influx. The discovery of gold in California in 1848 caused a large influx of settlers from the east. Fluctuate. Recently, the price of a pound of tomatoes has fluctuated from a high of 45 cents to a low of 29 cents. Fluent. Do you have to grope for words, or are you a fluent speaker?
Group 5. Genre. Poe was the originator of a genre of detective story. Progenitor. The Bible states that Adam was the progenitor of the human race. Degenerate. But for the skill of the presiding officer, the debate would have degenerated into an exchange of insults. Engender. Name-calling engenders hatred. Regenerate. The new manager regenerated the losing team and made it a strong contender for first place.
Group 6. Aggregation. At the airport, the homecoming champions were welcomed by a huge aggregation of admirers. Congregation. The minister addressed the congregation on the meaning of brotherhood. Segregation. The warden believes in segregation of first offenders from hardened criminals. Aggregate. The aggregate strength of the Allies was impressive. though individually some were quite weak. Gregarious. Except for hermits and recluses, who shun company, most people are gregarious.
Group 7. Coherence. If the relationship between the first sentence and what follows is not clear, the paragraph lacks coherence. Cohesion. There can be no real cohesion in an alliance if the parties have little in common. Adhere. Apply the sticker according to the directions, or it will not adhere. Cohere. I glued together the fragments of the vase, but they did not cohere. Inherent. Because of her inherent carelessness, I doubt my sister can ever be a good driver.
Group 8. Quadrilateral. A square is a quadrilateral. Collateral. After voting for the road building program, the legislature took up the collateral issue of how to raise the necessary funds. Equilateral. If one side of an equilateral triangle measures 3 feet, the other two must also be 3 feet each. Lateral. The building plan shows both a front and a lateral view of the proposed structure. Multilateral. A mother has to be a nurse, housekeeper, shopper, cook, teacher, etc. She plays a multilateral role. Unilateral. Don't judge the matter by my opponent's unilateral statement.
Group 9. Alliteration. Note the alliteration in the line, "Sing a song of sixpence." Literacy. When registering as a new voter, take along your diploma as proof of literacy. Literal. We translate laissez faire as absence of government interference, but its literal meaning is let do. Literary. Mark Twain is one of the greatest figures in our literary history. Literate. The school's main goal in working with adults who can neither read nor write is to make them literate.
Group 10. Luminary. A number of luminaries, including a Nobel Prize winner and 2 leading authors, will be present. Elucidate. I asked the teacher to elucidate a point that was not clear to me. Lucid. To obviate misunderstanding, state the directions in the most lucid way possible. Luminous. With this watch, you can tell the time in the dark, because its hands and dial are luminous. Translucent. Lampshades are translucent, but not transparent.
Group 13. Depose. Did the king abdicate, or was he deposed? Impose. Cleaning up after the job is the repairman's responsibility, Don't let him impose it on you. Postpone. Mr. Marks has postponed the test until tomorrow to give us an extra day to study. Superimpose. Today's snowfall superimposed a fresh 2 inches on yesterday's accumulation. Transpose. There is a misspelled word on your paper. Strength. Correct it by transposing the last 2 letters.
Group 14. Inscription. The inscription on Paul's medal reads, "For excellence in English." Scribe. Both candidates used professional scribes to prepare their campaign speeches. Script. How much time did the actors have to memorize the script? Subscriber. The petition to nominate Sue for president of the freshman class already has 43 subscribers. Conscript. When there are not enough volunteers for the armed forces, the government conscripts additional men. Prescribe. The law prescribes that aliens may not vote. Her physician prescribed some pills, a light diet, and plenty of rest.
Group 15. Similarity. The 2 pills are alike in color and shape, but there the similarity ends. Simile. He is as brave as a lion is a simile. Assimilate. The letter N in the prefix in is often assimilated with the following letter. For example, in plus legible becomes illegible. A bright student assimilates knowledge rapidly. Simulate. Nancy was the star of the show. She simulated the bewildered mother very effectively. Dissimilar. These gloves are not a pair. They are quite dissimilar. Simultaneous. The flash of an explosion reaches us before the sound, though the 2 are simultaneous. Group 17. Disillusion. When President Lincoln took office, the Union faced imminent dissolution. Dissolve. Since the members lack mutual interest, the club will probably dissolve. After our quarrel, Grace and I dissolved our friendship. Resolution. The resolution of our air and water pollution problems will be difficult and costly. Resolve. A witness provided the clue that resolved the mystery. Absolute. A democratic ruler is restricted by a constitution, a legislature, and courts, but a dictator has absolute power. Soluble. Sugar is soluble in water. Someone would have found the answer by now if the problem were soluble. Solvent. In a saltwater solution, the water is the solvent and the salt is the solute. The examiners found the bank solvent, much to the relief of its depositors.
Group 18. Abound. Our nation abounds in opportunities for well-educated young men and women. Fish abound in the waters off Newfoundland. Inundate. On election night, the victors' offices were inundated by congratulatory messages. Redound. Our team's sportsmanlike conduct redounds to the credit of the school. Abundant. Before Christmas, the stores have abundant supplies of toys. Redundant. Remove the last word of the following sentence because it is redundant. My report is longer than Bob's report.
Group 19. Veracity. Since you have lied to us in the past, you should not wonder that we doubt your veracity. Verdict. We would like to know your verdict in the matter. Verity. That smoking is injurious to health is a scientifically established verity. Aver. 2 eyewitnesses averred they had seen the defendant at the scene. Verify. So far, the charges have been neither disproved nor verified. Veritable. As the pretended heirs of Peter Wilkes were disposing of his fortune, the veritable heirs arrived.
Group 20. Visibility. With the fog rolling in and visibility approaching zero, it was virtually impossible for planes to land. Envision. Coach Brown envisions Mary as a prima ballerina. Improvise. Did the entertainer prepare his jokes before the program or improvise them as he went along? Revise. Before handing in your composition, be sure to revise it carefully. Invisible. The microscope enables us to see organisms invisible to the naked eye. Video. The audio, sound, and video signals of a television program can be recorded on magnetic tape. Visual. Radar tells us of an approaching object long before visual contact is possible.
Group 1. Forearm. Henry protected his face from George's blows by raising his forearms. Forebear. John F. Kennedy's forebears migrated to America from Ireland. Foreboding. The day before the accident, I had a foreboding that something would go wrong. Forecast. Have you listened to the weather forecast for tomorrow? Forefront. In combat, the officer was always in the forefront of the attack, leading his men on to victory. foresight. Foresight is better than hindsight. Foreword. Before Chapter 1, there is a brief foreword in which the author explains why he wrote the book. Foreshadow. Our defeat in the championship game was foreshadowed by injuries to two of our star players in a previous game. Foregoing. Carefully review the foregoing chapter before reading any further. Foremost. Did you know that Benjamin Franklin was one of the foremost inventors of the 18th century?
Group 2. Misbelief. People thought the earth was flat until Columbus corrected that misbelief. Misdeed. The wrongdoer was punished for his misdeed by a fine and imprisonment. Misgiving. Dad has no misgivings when Mother takes the wheel because she is an excellent driver. Mishap. Right after the collision, each driver blamed the other for the mishap. Misstep. Quitting school is a misstep that you may regret for the rest of your life. Misfire. The bear escaped when the hunter's rifle misfired. Mislay. Yesterday I mislaid my biology book and it took me about a half hour to find it. Mislead. Some traffic signs are so confusing that they mislead the traveler.
Group 3. Outlook. The outlook for unskilled laborers is not bright, as their jobs are gradually being taken over by machines. Output. The output of the average American factory worker is steadily increasing. Outgrow. The jacket Dad bought me last year is too small. I have outgrown it. Outlast. Our kitchen table is more solidly constructed than the chairs and will probably outlast them. Outrun. We scored a touchdown when Joe caught a forward pass and outran his pursuers. Outwit. In his detective stories, Jim manages to outwit the cleverest criminals. Outlandish. A masquerade is always interesting because people come in such outlandish costumes. Outspoken. Mary sometimes hurts others when she criticizes their work because she is too outspoken.
Group 4. Overdose. Do not take more of the medicine than the doctor ordered. An overdose may be dangerous. Oversupply. We have a shortage of skilled technicians, but an oversupply of unskilled workers. Overburden. It would overburden me to have my piano lesson Thursday because I have so much homework on that day. Overestimate. Joe overestimated the capacity of the bus when he thought it could hold 60. It has room for only 48. Overshadow. Their gaieties were overshadowed by the sad news. Overwhelm. The department store guards were nearly overwhelmed by the crowds of shoppers waiting for the sale to begin. Overbearing. When the monitor gave too many orders, the teacher scolded him for being overbearing. Overconfident. I was so sure of passing that I wasn't going to study, but Dad advised me not to be overconfident. Overgenerous. Because the service was poor, Mother thought Dad was overgenerous in leaving the waiter a 15% tip.
Group 5. Unconcern. The audience was breathless with anxiety during the daring tightrope act, though the acrobats themselves performed with seeming unconcern for their own safety. Undeceive. If you think I can get Mr. Black to hire you because he is my cousin, let me undeceive you. I have no influence with him. Unnerve. The unsportsmanlike noises of the fans so unnerved our star player that he missed 2 foul shots in a row. Unscramble. The previous secretary had mixed up the files so badly that it took my sister about a week to unscramble them. Unshackle. When mutinous sailors were put in irons in the olden days, nobody was allowed to unshackle them. Unabridged. Though an abridged dictionary is convenient to use, it contains far fewer definitions than an unabridged dictionary. Unbiased. Don't ask the mother of a contestant to serve as a judge, because it may be hard for her to remain unbiased. Unquenchable. Many teenagers have an unquenchable thirst for adventure stories. They read one after another. Unwary. An unwary pedestrian is much more likely to be struck by a car than one who looks both ways and crosses with the light.
Group 6. Underbrush. On its way through the dense jungle, the patrol had to be constantly wary of enemy soldiers concealed in the underbrush. Undergraduate. Most undergraduates take 4 years to earn a degree, but some achieve it sooner by attending summer sessions. Underpayment. If too little is deducted from Dad's weekly wages for income tax, it results in an underpayment at the end of the year. Undersigned. Among the undersigned, in the petition to the governor were some of the most prominent persons in the state. Understatement. Frank's remark that he was slightly bruised in the accident is an understatement. He suffered 2 fractured ribs. Understudy. While the star is recuperating from her illness, her role will be played by her understudy. Underscore. When we take notes, our teacher wants us to underscore items that are especially important. Undersell. When discount houses tried to undersell department stores, the latter reduced prices too and adopted the slogan, "We will not be undersold." Underdeveloped. Our country has spent billions of dollars to help the underdeveloped nations improve their standards of living. Underprivileged. The underprivileged child from the crowded slum tenement has many more problems to overcome than the child from the middle-class home.
Group 7. Upheaval. The Prime Minister's proposal for new taxes created such an upheaval that his government fell. Upkeep. Our neighbor traded in his old car because the upkeep had become too high. Upstart. When the new representative entered the legislature, some older members received him coldly because they regarded him as an upstart. Upturn. Most merchants report a slowdown in sales for October, but confidently expect an upturn with the approach of Christmas. Update. Our world geography teacher has just received an updated map that shows the latest national boundaries. Upgrade. To qualify for better jobs, many employees attend evening courses where they can upgrade their skills. Uproot. The love of liberty is so firmly embedded in men's hearts that no tyrant can hope to uproot it. Upcoming. The management will be glad to mail you its leaflet, which contains news of upcoming films. Upright. When knocked off his feet, the boxer waited till the count of 9 before returning to an upright position.
Group 8. Withdraw. Tom is my principal backer. If he withdraws his support, I don't see how I can be elected. Withdrawal. My uncle paid for his vacation trip by making a withdrawal from his bank account. Withdrawn. We talked to the neighbor's youngster and tried to be friendly, but he didn't say anything. He seemed to be withdrawn. Withhold. Please don't interrupt me. If you have something to say, withhold your comment until I have finished speaking. Withholding tax. Your employer is required to deduct a certain amount from your salary as a withholding tax payable to the federal government. Withstand. The walls of a dam must be strong enough to withstand tremendous water pressure. Notwithstanding. Notwithstanding their advantage of height, the visiting players were unable to beat our basketball team. Unit 5. Adonis. Peter, who was chosen the handsomest boy in the senior class, is quite an Adonis. Aegis. An international force under the aegis of the United Nations has been dispatched to the troubled area. Amazon. Pioneer women were veritable Amazons, performing heavy household chores in addition to toiling in the fields beside their menfolk. Ambrosial. The ambrosial aroma of the roast whetted our appetites. Atlas. For reliable information about present national boundaries, consult an up-to-date atlas. Auroral. The darkness waned and a faint auroral glow began to appear in the east. Bacchanalian. At 2 a.m., the neighbors called the police to quell the bacchanalian revelry in the upstairs apartment. Chimerical. At first, Robert Fulton's plans for his steamboat were derided as chimerical nonsense. Draconian. The dictator took draconian measures against those he suspected of plotting a rebellion. Elysian. Students studying for final examinations yearn for the Elysian idleness of the summer vacation. Hector. The pickets did not allow themselves to be provoked despite the unruly crowds that gathered to hector them. Herculean. Among the Herculean tasks confronting large cities are slum clearance and traffic control. Hermetic. Dad had to break the hermetic seal to get a pill from the new bottle. Iridescent. Children enjoy blowing iridescent soap bubbles from pipes. Jovial. Our jovial host entertained us with several amusing anecdotes about his employer. Labyrinthine. Out-of-towners may easily lose their way in New York City's labyrinthine subway passages. Laconic. All I received in response to my request was the laconic reply, "Wait." Lethargic. For several hours after the operation, the patient was lethargic because of an anesthetic. Lucullan. Thanksgiving dinner at grandmother's is almost a Lucullan feast. Martial. The Helvetians were a martial people who tried to conquer southern Gaul. Mentor. The retiring foreman was persuaded to stay on for a month as mentor to his successor. Mercurial. The older partner is rather dull and morose, but the younger has a mercurial temperament that appeals to customers. Myrmidon. The dictator surrounded himself with myrmidons who would loyally and pitilessly execute all orders. Nemesis. Napoleon crushed many opponents, but Wellington proved to be his nemesis. Odyssey. Your travel agent will gladly plan a year's odyssey to places of interest around the world. Paean. When the victory was announced, people danced in the streets and sang paeans of joy. Palladium. The little girl habitually fell asleep clutching a battered doll, her palladium. Panic. A panic ensued when someone in the crowded auditorium yelled, "Fire!" Philippic. In an hour-long philippic, the legislator denounced the lobbyist opposing his bill. Plutocratic. A handful of plutocratic investors, each owning more than 1,000 shares, determined the policies of the corporation. Procrustean. The Martinet governed his classroom with Procrustean discipline, assigning a week's detention to all offenders, no matter what the offense. Protean. The witness' Protean tactics under cross-examination gave the impression that he was untrustworthy. Pyrrhic. Our winning the opening game was a Pyrrhic victory, as our leading scorer was seriously injured. Saturnine. My former roommate was a Saturnine scholar who said very little and smiled rarely. Siren. The enemy employed a red-haired siren as a spy. Solon. Next week, the Solons will return to the capital for the opening of the legislature. Stentorian. Speak softly. You don't need a stentorian voice to be heard in this small room. Stygian. A power failure at 11:03 p.m. plunged the city into Stygian blackness. Tantalize. The considerate hostess removed the strawberry shortcake from the table so as not to tantalize her weight-conscious guest. Terpsichorean. The reviewers lauded the ballet troupe for its Terpsichorean artistry. Thespian. If you enjoy acting in plays, join your school's Thespian Club. Titanic. By a titanic effort, our football team won the victory.
Group 1. Au courant. By reading reviews, you can keep au courant with new developments in literature, films, television, and the theater. Blasé. Edna has been attending too many parties during the holidays. She appears blasé. Chic. She looked very chic in her new hat. Debonair. The head waiter was debonair with the guests, but firm with the waiters. Maladroit. Our new supervisor is clever in matters in which his predecessor was maladroit. Naive. You are naive if you believe implacable foes can be reconciled easily. Nonchalant. I am amazed that you can be so nonchalant about the coming test when everyone else is so worried. Group 2. Attaché. We were unable to see the ambassador, but we spoke to one of the attachés. Bourgeoisie. A viral bourgeoisie contributes to a nation's prosperity. Chargé d'affaires. Whom did the president designate as chargé d'affaires when he recalled the ambassador? Connoisseur. To verify the gem's value, we consulted a connoisseur of rare diamonds. Coterie. Helen won't bowl with us. She has her own coterie of bowling friends. Debutante. The debutante's photograph was at the head of the society page. Devotee. Samuel Adams was a passionate devotee of American independence. Elite. Fred likes to consider himself a member of the intellectual elite. Émigré. A committee was formed to find housing and employment for the anxious émigrés. Entrepreneur. What entrepreneur will invest his capital unless there is some prospect of a profit? Envoy. The president's envoy to the conference has not yet been chosen. Fiancé. Madeline introduced Mr. Cole as her fiancé. Gendarme. The chargé d'affaires requested that extra gendarme be posted outside the embassy. Ingénue. She was as simple and pretty as a film ingénue. Maître d'hôtel. The maître d'hôtel supervises the waiters. Martinet. Our dean is an understanding counselor, not a martinet. Nouveau riche. An unexpected inheritance catapulted him into the ranks of the nouveau riche. Protégé. He is a protégé of many popes. Raconteur. Mark Twain was an excellent raconteur. Group 3. Éclat. The violinist performed with rare éclat. Élan. Because the cast had rehearsed with such élan, the director had few apprehensions about the opening night performance. Ennui. You too would suffer from ennui if you had to spend months in a hospital bed. Esprit de corps. The employees showed extraordinary esprit de corps when they volunteered to work Saturdays for the duration of the crisis. Finesse. The adroit prosecutor arranged his questions with admirable finesse. Legerdemain. By a feat of legerdemain, the magician produced a rabbit from his hat. Malaise. After the heavy, late supper, he experienced a feeling of malaise. Noblesse oblige. In the olden days, kings and other nobles, observing the principle of noblesse oblige, fought at the head of their troops. Report. A common interest in gardening brought Molly and Loretta into closer rapport. Sang-froid. He played the game with perfect sang-froid. Savoir-faire. You need both capital and savoir-faire to be a successful entrepreneur. Group 4. Adieu. On commencement day, we shall bid adieu to our alma mater. Au revoir. Since I hope to see you again, I'll say au revoir rather than adieu. Billet doux. A timely billet doux can patch up a lover's quarrel. Bon mot. He often set the table a-roaring with a well-placed bon mot. Brochure. This helpful brochure explains Social Security benefits. Canard. It took a public appearance by the monarch to silence the canard that he had been assassinated. Cliché. Two clichés that we can easily do without are first and foremost and last but not least. Entre nous. The juniors expect to win, but, entre nous, their chances are not too good. Mot juste. To improve your writing, try to find the mot juste for each idea and avoid clichés. Précis. Include only the essential points when you write a précis. Repartee. James Boswell admired Samuel Johnson's power of repartee. Résumé. The instructor asked for a resume of the last lesson. Riposte. Surprised to see him eating the apple core, I asked, "Won't it affect you?" "Pleasurably," was his riposte. Tête-à-tête. Before answering, the witness had a tête-à-tête with his attorney. Group 5. Bête noire. She enjoyed all her subjects except mathematics, her bête noire. Carte blanche. The employer gave his secretary carte blanche in managing the routine affairs of the office. Cause célèbre. The trial of John Peter Zenger, a cause célèbre in the 18th century, helped to establish freedom of the press in America. Cul-de-sac. Painting proved to be a cul-de-sac for Philip Carey, as he had no real talent. Debacle. The debacle at Waterloo signaled the end of Napoleon's power. Fait accompli. Since Mother couldn't decide whether or not to buy the dress for me, I planned to buy it myself and present her with a fait accompli. Faux pas. However, it turned out to be a faux pas, as Mother made me return the dress. Impasse. The foreman reported that the jury could deliberate no further, as they had reached an impasse. Liaison. By joining the Alumni Association, graduates can maintain their liaison with the school. Mélange. Our last amateur show was a mélange of dramatic skits, acrobatics, ballet, popular tunes, and classical music. Mirage. The sheet of water we thought we saw on the road ahead turned out to be only a mirage. Group 6. Coup d'état. Napoleon seized power by a coup d'état. Démarche. Hitler's attack on Russia shortly after his pact with Stalin was a stunning démarche. Détente. An effective world disarmament treaty should bring a détente in international tensions. Entente. Canada and the United States have a long-standing entente on border problems. Laissez faire. Adam Smith believed a policy of laissez-faire toward business would benefit a nation. Lettre de cachet. Dr. Manette was imprisoned through a lettre de cachet. Rapprochement. The gradual rapprochement between these two nations, long traditional enemies, cheered all Europeans. Regime. The coup d'etat brought to power a regime that restored civil liberties to the oppressed people. Group 7. Avant-garde. Walt Whitman was no conservative. His daring innovations in poetry placed him in the avant-garde of 19th century writers. Bas-relief. The ancient Greek Parthenon is famed for its beautiful sculpture in bas-relief. Baton. A downbeat is the downward stroke of the conductor's baton, denoting the principally accented note of a measure. Chef-d'œuvre. Many connoisseurs regard Hamlet as Shakespeare's chef-d'œuvre. Dénouement. In the dénouement of Great Expectations, we learn that Pip's secret benefactor is the runaway convict whom Pip had once helped. Encore. In appreciation of the enthusiastic applause, the vocalist sang an encore. Genre. The literary genre to which Poe contributed most is the short story. Musicale. At last night's musicale in my cousin's house, we were entertained by a string quartet. Palette. After a few canvas strokes, the artist reapplies his brush to his palette for more paint. Repertoire. The guitarist apologized for not being able to play the requested number, explaining that it was not in his repertoire. Vignette. James Joyce's Dubliners offers some unforgettable vignettes of life in Dublin at the turn of the century. Group 8. À la carte. If you order an à la carte dinner, you select whatever you wish from the bill of fare, paying only for the dishes ordered. Apéritif. Select a non-alcoholic appetizer, such as tomato juice, if you do not care for an apéritif. Bonbon. For St. Valentine's Day, Mother received a heart-shaped box of delicious bonbons. Cuisine. Around the corner is a restaurant specializing in French cuisine. Demitasse. Aunt Dorothy always takes cream with her coffee. She is not fond of demitasse. Entree. We had a choice of the following entrees: roast beef, fried chicken, or baked mackerel. Filet. Because they contain no bones or excess fat, fillets are more expensive than ordinary cuts of meat. Hors d'oeuvres. Mother will need olives, celery, and anchovies for her hors d'oeuvres. pièce de résistance. If you eat too much of the introductory dishes, you will have little appetite for the pièce de résistance. Table d'hôte. If you order a table d'hôte dinner, you pay the price fixed for the entire dinner, even if you do not have some of the dishes. Group 9. Bouffant. School corridors and stairways would have to be widened considerably if all girls were to wear bouffant skirts. Chemise. Though more comfortable than most other dresses, the chemise has often been ridiculed for its shapelessness. Coiffure. Sally's attractive new coiffure was arranged for her by my sister's hairstylist. Corsage. At the Christmas season, ladies often adorn their coats with a holly corsage. Cravat. My cousin sent me a light blue shirt and a navy blue cravat. Flamboyant. To add a touch of bright color to her outfit, Jane wore a flamboyant scarf. Toupee. The actor's baldness was cleverly concealed by a very natural-looking toupee. Vogue. Women's fashions change rapidly. What is in style today may be out of vogue tomorrow. Group 10. Avoirdupois. Dieters constantly check their avoirdupois. Bagatelle. Pay attention to important matters. Don't waste time on bagatelles. Coup de grâce. A sergeant unholstered his pistol and ran forward to give the coup de grâce. Facade. The patient's cheerful smile was just a facade. Actually, she was suffering from ennui. Fête. Retiring employees are often fêted at a special dinner. Foyer. Let's meet in the foyer of the Bijou Theater. Milieu. David found it much easier to make friends in his new milieu. Parasol. In summer, when you stroll on the boardwalk in the noonday sun, it is advisable to take along a parasol. Par excellence. Charles Dickens was a raconteur par excellence. Pince-nez. Since they are held in place by a spring that pinches the nose, pince-nez may not be as comfortable as ordinary eyeglasses. Raison d'être. Abe is very fond of golf. He feels it is his chief raison d'être. Rendezvous. We agreed to meet after the test at the corner ice cream parlor, our usual rendezvous. Silhouette. I knew that Dad was coming to let me in because I recognized his silhouette behind the curtain door. Sobriquet. Andrew Jackson was known by the sobriquet Old Hickory. Souvenir. To most graduates, the senior yearbook is a treasured souvenir of high school days. Tour de force. George's 60-yard touchdown run was an admirable tour de force that won the game for us. Vis-a-vis. At the banquet table, I had the good fortune to sit vis-a-vis an old school chum. Group 1. basso, baritone, tenor, alto, contralto, mezzo-soprano, soprano, coloratura, falsetto. Group 2. Grave, largo, adagio, lento, andante, moderato, allegro, vivace, presto, prestissimo. Group 3. Crescendo, decrescendo, dolce, forte, fortissimo, pianissimo, piano, sforzando. Group 4. A cappella, arpeggio, legato, pizzicato, staccato, tremolo, vibrato. Group 5. Aria, bravura, cantata, concerto, duet, finale, intermezzo, libretto, opera, oratorio, scherzo, solo, sonata, trio. Group 6. Cameo, campanile, canto, chiaroscuro, cupola, fresco, intaglio, majolica, mezzanine, mezzotinct, patina, portico, rotunda, stucco, tempera, terracotta, torso. Group 7. Cognoscente, dilettanti, maestro, virtuoso. Group 8. Dolce far niente, fiasco, imbroglio, incognito, vendetta. Group 9. Antipasto, Chianti, gusto, pizza. Group 10. Gondola, grotto, piazza, portfolio, salvo, sottovoce. Group 1. Aficionado, caballero. conquistador, desperado, duenna, gaucho, grandee, hidalgo, junta, junto, matador, mestizo, peon, picador, picaro, renegade, señor, señora, señorita, toreador, torero, vaquero. Group 2. Adobe, bolero, bonanza, bravado, cabana, castanets, fiesta, flotilla, hacienda, incomunicado, mantilla, oleo, peccadillo, pancho, pueblo, siesta, tortilla. Group 3. Arroyo, bronco, burro, canyon, indigo, mañana, mesa, mustang, pampas, sierra,